Hey, this is Chris Holland. Before we get started on today's episode, I wanted to mention that reviews on iTunes are especially important to the show. They help find new listeners and give me the warm fuzzies. So if you enjoy the show and have been listening for a while, if you could visit the listing on iTunes to leave a 5-star rating and some nice words, that would be really helpful. I'd appreciate it a lot. If you're on a laptop or a desktop computer, you can just go to filmfestivalsecrets.com/iTunes, and you'll be taken to a page with a little blue link that says Visit in iTunes, and you can go to the iTunes software, and it'll jump straight to the page where you can click those 5 stars and type a few nice words. If you're on a mobile device, you'll need to launch iTunes and search for the podcast. That link doesn't, work all nicely on the mobile stuff, I've noticed. Today's guest for the podcast is Mark Stolaroff, who's better known as the creator of the No Budget Film School, which you can find at nobudgetfilmschool.com. He's also the producer of a bunch of films that have played dozens of festivals, including Tribeca and the LA Film Festival and Sundance. He's got a really wide range of experience in producing, distribution, and festivals. But today, we're going to talk about his crowdfunding experience. He's got a campaign going right now to raise finishing funds for his new film, Driver X, which is based on his screenwriter friend's experiences as an Uber driver. And it looks like a really great concept. They've finished principal photography with some really neat actors, including one of the stars of Better Call Saul and some folks from The Office and stuff like that. So if you're in front of a computer right now, you can peruse the campaign site. Just go to driverxmovie.com, and that'll take you straight to the Kickstarter page. If you're not driving or walking while you listen, which is, my favorite place to listen to podcasts, you can sort of poke through those links while you listen. Otherwise, go to the show notes, which you can find by going to filmfestivalsecrets.com/podcast and just look for the episode there. Mark Stolaroff is his name. And last but not least, before we get started, I wanted to mention the upcoming launch of a new online course, Filmmakers Crowdfunding Blueprint, which is based on my experiences in crowdfunding, my own projects, and my work with festivals and filmmakers on fundraising for their projects. That's going to launch at the end of April 2016, but there are some special offers for you guys listening to the podcasts at a special URL. If you go to filmfestivalsecrets.com/crowd, you'll be able to see all that before the launch and after. So let's get started with Mark Stolaroff. You are listening to the Film Festival Secrets podcast. I'm Chris Holland, and today I'm talking to Mark Stolaroff. Hi, Mark.
Hey, how you doing?
I am doing well. And you seem to be doing pretty okay yourself. You got a Kickstarter campaign that seems to be making some money.
Yeah, we're rolling along. To use one of our many driving puns. It's a film about ride sharing, about an Uber driver. He's not technically driving for Uber. We made up a fictional company, but we use a lot of driving puns to entice people to get involved in our project.
So the film's called Driver X, the Uber movie.
Well, the project is called Driver X.
So what is the film called? Just Driver X?
Just Driver X.
Okay, cool.
I think the Uber people would probably have a problem with our movie called the Uber movie.
Yeah, I take it you haven't heard from them at all.
No, people keep saying you should hook up with them, and they might do some kind of, whatever. And I'm like, we're not ripping Uber. I mean, we don't. It's not Uber, but it's certainly based on Uber, and we try to be as honest as we can about the experience of ride sharing. So I don't know if Uber would be happy with that depiction or not. And it's not my. I think we're just going to do our thing and see what happens.
Sure. So I've known you for way too long. I think longer than either of us care to admit. But talk a little bit about how you got into indie film and the projects you've worked on so far.
So I was one of those kids. I'm old now. I've been old now for a while. Who grew up making little films in school when it was hard to do that when there wasn't video and you did it on 8mm. And so, so I've always been interested in this kind of stuff, but when I went to college, I kind of chickened out there. I went to the University of Texas where they actually had a really great undergraduate film program, and I chickened out and majored in business, but I really, had no interest in the business stuff I was doing. And I was lucky I got into a business honors program that gave me a lot of flexibility. And I ended up taking film production at UT and all the prerequisite classes and loved it and thought I was pretty good at it actually, but I still just wasn't convinced that I should make it a career. So I did 2 years of investment banking after college. And then I went back to Houston. My father got sick and I went back to Houston to take care of things with the family. And I did my second year. I was in New York at the time. I did my second year investment banking in Houston. And then I started a theater with a friend of mine that we grew up doing skits and literally like skits for our parents. And in fourth grade, we do these little skits and stuff in school. And so we started this theater because he was like a theater major at Duke. And, for 5 years, I ran a what I would call it now, a DIY, live theater that, we financed the shows ourselves. We wrote a lot of the shows ourselves. I performed in a lot of them. I'm not a very good actor. And it was in that moment, I was like, I don't know, why am I doing theater? I really want to do film. And I thought I was pretty good at it. And so at some point I started working on little local films in Houston and then eventually realized, I need to get out of Houston to do this. And this is the time of Clerks and El Mariachi and Slacker when if you were in Texas. And I was really inspired by those films. And that's the kind of movies I wanted to make. I was all into the whole DIY thing anyway. I didn't have big visions that needed a lot of money to make. So when I left for LA in 94, it was to make my own version of Clerks. And so I started working at Roger Corman's company when I got out here, and production, kind of worked my way up the production track, first AD kind of production track. And then in 97, when I was kind of still contemplating directing my own movie, I heard about this company called Next Wave Films that had just been announced. I was at South by Southwest at the time, and they were announced during the festival of this new company that the Independent Film Channel was financing, that Peter Broderick had founded. And he was at the festival, talking about it. And I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I want to do. This combines my kind of passion for no budget filmmaking with, whatever business background or whatever, because it was about giving finishing funds to these kinds of movies. And in fact, the people that I had been following and loved, like Kevin Smith and Robert Rodriguez and Steven Soderbergh, all these kinds of people were on the board of advisors for this company. And I tracked Peter Broderick down in the hallways at South by Southwest and said, "Hey, I really want to work for you." And he was so overwhelmed. He didn't even, he couldn't even do anything about it. But I gave him resume and eventually met with him in LA. And I was the first person he hired and worked for him for 6 years, looking at thousands of low budget films, getting involved with a few of them. We got involved with Chris Nolan's first film, Following. That was our second film, actually. We got involved with Joe Carnahan's Blood, Guts, Bullets, and Octane. That was our first film. We were involved with Pi for a while, but then that fell through. And but anyway, during that 6 year period, we looked at a lot of great films, got involved with some terrific films, and then when Next Wave closed in 2002, I was kind of left with like, well, what am I going to do now? And I, really didn't know. I mean, I knew a lot about that part of the independent film world and had made a lot of connections in that world, and so I just stayed in it, as a producer. And I went from having money and giving money to people to having to go out and raise money, but I was never interested in raising money. And I kind of thought I knew how to make movies this other way, which is not raising money, where you just make movies with whatever money you have. And I actually had money at that time. I had, saved up money. I mean, I had a job for 6 years, and plus I had some money saved up from investment banking. I'd invested all the money I'd made when I was doing that. So, for a while there, I was able to self-finance films. So I started working with Henry Burial, who's my kind of main, filmmaking partner. I met him when I was at Next Wave. He submitted a film to us they'd maybe spent $3,000 on, and we got involved with it and gave them finishing funds. That film was called Somebody, and it got into dramatic competition at Sundance in 2001. And when he came to me in 2004, I was working with a gentleman named Ron Judkins on a company that was going to make a slate of of no budget films, of like $200,000 films. We were going to raise money to make, like 10 of these films. And he came with me with this project that was a Sundance Screenwriters Lab project that had original producers had left the project. And we just decided, let's make this film for $50,000. We just thought we could raise put in our own money and make it for $50,000. So we made True Love back in 2004. Took us a while to make it. And then Henry and I were going to festivals with True Love when he came up with the germ of the idea for Pig, which I loved. I mean, it was a 1-sentence pitch that I just thought was terrific. And so we started working on that together. He was, writing treatments and then writing drafts. And then,
well, now that you've mentioned the one, you have to, you can't leave us hanging with the 1-sentence pitch.
No, I can't tell you the 1-sentence pitch because it gives away the whole mystery. Pig is a mystery. Yeah. It's a sci-fi mystery. And if I were to tell you that one sentence, it gives away the whole, I mean, what's Pig mean is, the whole thing. And so, that's why I can't tell you. I can't tell you, or I have to kill you. But
where can people see Pig?
So you can go to the Pig Project. No, the Pig Picture. Sorry, thepigpicture.com, and we're selling it on through Gumroad off our website. But you can also go to iTunes, and there's other links on the page if you prefer to find it other places. It's on Fandor and Amazon and all those kind of places. But if you do buy it from us, obviously you can buy the DVD from us, or you can buy the download. The download has a lot of we have a lot of extras, and it's a pretty good deal. We created a lot of different extras for the Gumroad. So that was another film that Henry and I put our own money in. I went to some people that are very close to me, and got some more money, and we basically self-financed that. And that was our first, foray, is that the right word? Into crowdfunding. I mean, we started crowdfunding that movie in the beginning of 2011. We did our campaign. So it was relatively new. Kickstarter was at that point. It was, I don't know when it started, but it was still pretty new. And you had to explain it to people, and you were a little embarrassed to maybe go to your wealthy friends and tell them that you needed $15,000. Because my friends would be like, well, why don't you just put that in yourself? They didn't know that I didn't have $15,000 or whatever. But, so yeah, I started with Kickstarter in beginning of 2011 with Pig. And then Henry, actually that film was very successful in a certain way. It played a lot of festivals. It played a lot of interesting kinds of festivals. It split between general festivals and genre festivals. And, so we went all over the world with that film, went to Europe, I think 3 times, which was really fun. And that film actually got Henry his next film. He was attached to a film for years right after Somebody, actually, called The House That Jack Built, which was written by Joe Vasquez back in the mid 90s. And then Joe Vasquez died. And then Henry was attached, like in 2002 or something, but they could never raise the money. These were veteran producers. They were trying to raise millions of dollars to make this movie, but they saw Pig and they thought, wow, maybe we don't need to raise millions of dollars. And so they put together some financing and, made and shot The House That Jack Built. And I wasn't officially involved. I was helping Henry, just looking at his budget and stuff. And then I became a production accountant just to save them some money. And but when they went into post, they didn't have any money. So they hired me. I say hired, and that sounds like I got paid, but they hired me to come on board as a producer and basically see the film out from there. And so that my job was to not only be like the post-production supervisor, but also to deal with festival strategy and then to raise money. And we put together another Kickstarter campaign and did it again. And that was in the beginning of 2013, so 2 years later. So Kickstarter changed a little bit maybe over that time, or it certainly was people were more familiar with it. The whole whatever that TV show that became the movie, what's her name show? I never watched it, so I can't. Veronica Mars. That was going on when we launched. And actually, I think it sent some people to our page because people were so all over Kickstarter when that was happening. So clearly it had reached a mainstream by that point, and you didn't have to be in the Kickstarter closet. You could admit you were doing this, and it was a cool thing to do. And so we raised our goal on that one, and then now it's 3 years later we're doing it again for Driver X. In all 3 situations we did finishing funds as opposed to production funds, which I really like that coming at it from that direction. But, certainly there's some advantages and disadvantages either way, I think. But it's nice to have something to show and feel like it's a real project and that kind of thing.
So initially for this film, you put up your own funds or you found investors to do principal photography? Is that how that worked?
Well, so the quick story on Driver X is all of 2014, pretty much. We were, Henry and I were working to get a larger budget horror film off the ground. I don't know, it was like $1.5 million budget or something like that. And so a little bit outside of our element. And it's a great script, and we had the money. It was like gonna happen, that whole story, and then it fell through, and then it was gonna happen again, and it was looking like it was gonna happen again, and then it fell through again. And we were rewriting the script, and we were doing that all of 2014, and we realized a couple of things. One is that we'd never worked on a movie where, certainly Henry, where he did that many rewrites, and we didn't know if it was even gonna ever happen. Because when we did rewrites of our other projects, they were going to happen. We were going to make them happen. There was just no question about it. So you knew when you were doing all that work, it was going to pay off. And this is the first time we did a year's worth of work and nothing happened. And then we're like, wow, that was kind of a drag. We don't even have a movie at the end of the day. And we certainly didn't make any money on it. And we weren't going to make a lot of money on it even when it did happen because the fees, weren't that high. But you just realize, wow, I thought no budget filmmaking was hard and whatever, but at least you got a film at the end of the day. So in that context, he wasn't working. I wasn't really working. We were working hard on this movie. And so he was running low on funds. He has 2 kids and a working wife. And he started driving for Uber to make ends meet. And he had to do that at night because he was taking care of the kids, part of the day. And so he was going out at night and he would pull over. I stay up all night. I work at night, really. And he would pull over at like 2 a.m. and call me and go, "Oh my God, you're not gonna believe what just happened. What this person just said, what they just did." And I was like, "That is awesome. You got to write that stuff down." And then it became like, wait a second, there's a movie here. Like we need to really write this stuff down. And he would write down specific lines that people would say. He would write down the things. And he started writing this movie about a stay-at-home dad who had recently lost his business, which was not Henry's situation, but this guy in our movie, Leonard had a record store for years, and then that obviously went out of business. And so now his wife was working during the day. He takes care of his kids. And he's there at the beginning of the movie, they realize they have a big mortgage they can't afford to cover. And he's going to have to really step up his game and go get some kind of a job. He'd been interviewing for jobs in the music business, but he wasn't getting anything. And so he discovers this company called Driver X, which is again, very close to Uber, and starts driving at night, which is a very specific kind of rideshare driving in LA at night, and especially if you're a 50-year-old man, you're dealing with, people half your age, the millennial generation. And so our film is a lot about, that just the differences in the generations, Generation X versus the millennials, learning to cope with the fact that your world is now run by that generation behind you, which is something that, in the film business, I think a lot of people my age are starting to realize like, wow, these up and comers are starting to run what I used to run, which is a very frightening thing when you reach a certain age. But anyway, these are the kind of things that Henry was discovering, and then just dealing with, the financial struggles of being in a marriage and all these other kinds of things. So a lot of what happens in the movie, really happened to Henry. It's inspired by that. It's also, it's also fiction. There's fiction in there, obviously. And it's based on our lead actor, some of his experiences, Patrick Fabian. And so anyway, so we came up with that idea, and we were like, wow, we can make this. This isn't, this is totally down our alley. We own the car. We can shoot at your house. It was all that kind of no budget filmmaking collecting resource assessment kind of thing that I teach in my class. And so my goal though was from the very beginning was like, we're going to raise proper financing for this. I'm going to go out, I'm going to put together, create a, operating agreement and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to go to my wealthy friends back home and I'm going to raise this money to make the movie. And I have, I've got a lot of friends and I'm sure they're going to be excited about, my new movie and blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, we knew that it was very topical. I mean, we knew that's the reason I really wanted to raise money is that, Pig was a very tricky film. And I just didn't think it was very hard to imagine it would get its money back, unless we were incredibly successful. And I didn't want to go to friends and lose their money. So I didn't mind losing my own money, but this was a film that I felt like, wow, this film actually it's a commercial idea and we're going to get some cast because we have friends that, are kind of name actors now, and we can cast it up and we can make something that could make its money back. So I felt very confident about going out to friends and raising money, but we needed to make the movie like right away because we felt like we were on a kind of a time limit as far as it being in the zeitgeist, the whole subject matter. So we jumped in and started making it without raising any money. And that was done through a series of loans. This is something I do not teach in my class. I first thing I tell people is don't borrow money, don't put your movie on credit cards, whatever. But I was getting a lot of 0% credit cards. So I put a lot of stuff on that. I borrowed money against my stocks. I borrowed some money from, again, some people very close to me. And we shot it. And I still have to go out and raise that equity money. I still haven't done that yet. I mean, I'm just starting to. I've been so busy with that and classes and stuff, and it just taking a while to get all the materials done. And now with this Kickstarter campaign, that's been a full-time job, and so I'm just really starting to go out to people. So the Kickstarter money is really, in addition to the equity money, it's to cover the finishing funds, the editing and sound design and color correction and all that kind of stuff.
But the fact that it's finishing funds and you have, all of your principal photography done gives you a lot of material to work with when, pitching this, right? People aren't, they're not giving money to something abstract or that's just a bunch of storyboards. You actually have, we have this actor, and not only is he committed to the project, it's done. He's done his work.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. And I think it also makes it a little less mysterious why your pitch video. Now, pitch videos typically run, 2 to 3 minutes? Yours?
Don't tell them. Don't tell them.
How
Don't
long is
tell
yours?
So it's 6 minutes, 40 seconds or something like that. It's long. I mean, we have a long story. I mean, we have a lot of stuff to talk about. And like you said, we have a film to show. I don't believe in, and I think other quote experts, I'm not an expert. I've done this 3 times and I do not call myself a crowdfunding expert. And I don't, people don't hire me to do that. Although I've consulted on a lot of projects and I have very strong opinions, but I don't study this and I don't look at all the trends and all that kind of stuff like experts do. But I've given to more than 100 campaigns and I've certainly looked at more than that. So I have opinions on these things. So I don't have a rule on the length of a video. I've seen long videos that were just right. I've seen short videos that were too long. I mean, so my opinion was if we feel like it's moving along and we're enjoying it and people, we get feedback, we got a lot of feedback on that video, then we're okay. And so certainly people say to you, well, maybe it should be shorter, but a lot of people just really liked it as is. And it was at that stage when we were really trimming it down where if we were going to make it any shorter, we're just going to have to lift a whole section. And we just didn't want to do that. We should have maybe, I don't know, but I've gotten some really great feedback on the video. I have to say, I'm very happy with that because, these videos for me are very strategic. I mean, there's a third one I've done, and actually on Pig, I think we did 3 before we ended up with the final one. So I've done a bunch of them and I write them and, I'm in them and I'm bad usually in them. And then I edit them, and I'm not an editor either. So, I mean, Henry can edit, but I'm the one that ends up, doing these. And so, we have very specific point. There's a reason for every minute or every second of that video, and it doesn't mean that every second needs to be in there, but it was in there for a reason. It wasn't just for us to goofing off or whatever. So, and it all starts with, I think any campaign really starts with, the goal shouldn't be to raise money. I mean, ultimately that's their goal, and that might be your first or second reason, but I think it should be maybe your second or third reason. Your first reason is really about gaining awareness for your project and connecting with very specific audiences, niche audiences. So that first specific audience is going to be your friends and family, just because that's who's going to care and who, you already have their email address or their phone number. And so that's your first audience. But then after that, you have to start thinking, well, who are the people that I don't know that might be really interested in this project? So, for us, it's things like, people who ride share, stay-at-home dads, people who are fans of the TV shows that our actors are in. So my lead actors on Better Call Saul, they have a huge, very loyal fan base, and he's got his own, loyal fan base. We have Melissa Fumero from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. We have Desmond Borges from You're the Worst. We have Oscar Nunez from The Office. So, it's like trying to connect with the fans of these shows. There's some other types of, niche audiences that are kind of like further out, from the kind of middle circle of audiences. And so when you create your page and your video, you are, intentionally writing stuff into that for those different audiences, and starting with your friends and family. I mean, what are the things that they're going to think are cool? I mean, my friends back home, I think they're going to be impressed with my lead actor's bio. He has an incredible bio. He's been around forever. He's been acting for 25 years. He's been on every TV show. They'll recognize him from something, and it's fun I think, for them to talk about, and he does it in a very funny way in the video, where he kissed, Kelly Kapowski and on Saved by the Bell and all this like stuff. I mean, we have some fun with it. And then, obviously we're talking about our backstory. We're trying to give ourselves some legitimacy when we do that this isn't our first, our first time to make a film. We've done, this is our fifth film together, all these kinds of things are all that stuff has a very specific purpose. So that's why that video is so long.
I think you call out the reasons that it's allowed to be as long as it is. I mean, it seems a little ridiculous to say 7 minutes is too long for a video, but in terms of Kickstarter plea videos, it's definitely on the long side. But you have every right to those minutes, because you are just establishing this waterfall of social proof of people who believe in you and believe in your project enough to be involved, and they're name actors and they're people that, people recognize. So I think that's an important lesson, is that you don't want to leave that stuff on the floor if it's legit, right? You don't want to say, simply for the sake of running time, whether we're talking about a pitch video or a short film or a feature film, your story needs to be, your film needs to be as long as it needs to be and not a minute longer.
Yeah. And absolutely. I mean, we cut, there are little things that, you cut because it can't be 3 seconds longer, and it's, we like to think that it's, that's up to your audience, I guess. But we like to think that it's very paced very, quickly, and it moves along, and there's a lot of B-roll. It's not just us talking. And, we try to have some fun. And even though Henry and I are really stiff on screen, mainly because we just didn't have time to prepare our lines, but, we have an actor who's terrific on screen. So he does, a lot of the talking too. But we try to keep it moving along. And, so, again, I was really happy to see, I got a tweet from the head of funny enough about editing, the head of the Final Cut Pro, what was formerly called the LA Final Cut Pro Users Group. It's now called something else because they don't just deal with Final Cut Pro, but that's a big editing group. It's a huge editing group in LA. And he tweeted, this is the best Kickstarter video I've ever seen. And I thought that was I was so, thrilled to see that, especially from an editor. So yeah, I'm sure some people who don't care will find it long or something, but I've gotten great feedback and I'm really happy with it, so, and it's not slick or fancy. That's the other thing. I mean, when I first started writing about Kickstarter, when I wrote my first article for my blog about Kickstarter, I said this, and I think it's still true, even though people have gotten a little bit, better on their videos, that, these videos do not have to be slick. You don't have to have slick graphics or shot really, really well. They need to be sincere. And you need to be able to hear people. So the audience should be good and they should look okay. There's no reason to make them look, bad, because they can be a reflection of, how well you think you're going to be, shooting your movie. But, we show the footage from our movie. So if the way our car looks in the video, that we shot, it doesn't look as good as it does in the movie, because we had, a professional cinematographer and, spent some time and money in making the car stuff look great. So we didn't have to make our pitch video car stuff look that great, because you're about to see what it really looks like. But I'm not a big believer that your videos have to look super slick. And I've seen super slick ones that were cold and turned me off, and I didn't care. I think that really the personal appeal is huge, and you have to look at the camera. You got to talk to your audience, and you got to tell them, sincerely why they should be interested in what you're doing. And if you're good at that, if you're, I've seen videos that people are so good at that, they're just really good on camera, and they come off very sincerely, and that's everything. That's more important than having a slick video,
For sure. I mean, I definitely think that in one way or another, if you're a filmmaker, your plea video needs to reflect that you are a good film. Like, you need to be able to show off those skills. But if you do it with film that you've already shot, that's great. So,
I mean, I don't, if I'm raising money, or if I'm looking at someone who's trying to raise money, I don't want to see that they spend a lot of money on their video necessarily. Hopefully they've been able to find a way to show that they can do it without, but you don't want to spend money. We didn't spend a dollar on that video because we didn't have a dollar to spend on that video. We're trying to raise money. We don't have a lot of extra money. So, but I mean, a good filmmaker should be able to, set up a camera properly and do all those kinds of things, more or less.
Yeah, without spending a lot of money. So it sounds like early on in your career, you sort of had the funding yourself to make films, and then crowdfunding kind of came along at the right time. Is that the way you feel about it, or?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, look, first of all, I've been teaching no budget filmmaking with No Budget Film School since 2005. And when I first started teaching that class, the premise of my class is you can make a movie with whatever money you have available to you right now in your pocket right now. And that meant, don't go out and fundraise. Don't go to AFM. Don't go to rich dentists. If you've got $5,000 or you can get a hold of $10,000, there's a movie you can make with $10,000. It's not every kind of movie. There's one movie probably that you can make with that $10,000. And that was my whole thing for however many years, whatever, 3, 4, how many years, 2005 to let's say 2010 or 2011. And then this crowdfunding thing pops up, and now it's like, wait a second. You can make a movie with not only what's in your pocket, but what you think you can raise out, through in a month through crowdfunding. And there's so many great reasons to do crowdfunding besides the money. Again, I would do it for every project, whether I needed the money or not, because we talked about a couple of those, but I haven't talked about all of them, all the great reasons for doing crowdfunding. But now it really started to change my class. And in a way, I mean, it didn't change it fundamentally, but this idea that how much money you can get, depending on how good you are, kind of crowdfunding, and there's a whole kind of thing to it. But I consulted on a project once that ended up working on officially as well. A terrific movie called Farrah Goes Bang. And when they came to me, I read the script and we did a whole consulting session. And they didn't have a single dollar to make that movie. And then they were talking about doing crowdfunding, and I kind of gave them my tips on that. And then they went out and raised $80,000. Crowdfunding, and they worked their butts off. They're really smart and really sharp. And they hit up everybody they knew and they didn't even really get money outside of people they knew. They just really hit the people they knew. And, so now they had $80,000 to go make a movie. I mean, that's the revolution, I think, from my perspective of kind of no budget filmmaking.
Yeah. I've been fond of saying over the last year or so that the word crowdfunding may or may not go away, but crowdfunding is just fundraising, right? There's no reason to distinguish between the two, because this is the way it should be done. You should be able to just take people's payments with a credit card, and we do everything else online. We buy toilet paper and airline tickets and whatever else online. Why not give to, good causes online? So it doesn't surprise me that, it's revolutionizing filmmaking in particular, because there's never been, I won't say never, but it's been a lot harder to take in small donations and reach out that way. But I do wonder how long it's going to be before the patina really wears off, and whether there's going to be kind of a slump of, people being tired of being asked for every damn little movie everybody wants to make. Certainly within the film industry, I think we see that. You've contributed to more than 100 campaigns. So have I. And some of that was just professional interest. But after a while, you just kind of go, oh my God. And it makes you hesitate about even starting one.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good question. And I don't know the answer. I wouldn't know. I can tell you this perspective though. I've got 100. I'm just looking now. Someone just donated while we were talking. We just went over 50% of our goal just now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have 140 backers now. Without doing a careful analysis, which I will be able to do because I keep really good records of this stuff. But at some point, I'll be able to tell you where all those people came from. Were they friends of mine? Were they friends of Henry's or Patrick's? Or were they strangers? And we're getting a lot of stranger dollars on this one because we came out with a really strong social media, and we were prepping all that prior to launching. And frankly, the Kickstarter tools have really worked in our favor. And looks like they just named us a Project We Love, which that just happened today too. I just noticing that, which is great. We got a $5,000 donation from someone I did not know who found us through Kickstarter algorithm tools or whatever, which is kind of amazing. So what I would say about that is that I've gotten backers who've never backed a project. This is the first one they've ever backed. Several, because I thank every single person through Kickstarter when they donate. So I go on, Kickstarter, you can go on to the message place and you can see how many they backed. Some people have backed 5, some people have backed 10, some people have backed a lot. One guy had backed 400. So that's just what he likes to do. So it's a real mix of people who, I know there are people who've burned out because I've personally emailed people that I know are like me and they get these requests. And you have to ask. You have to ask in different ways, but you have to ask. I think that's one of my big rules is like, don't be afraid to ask even the poorest person, because you just have to. And it's like you're not doing your job or doing what your kind of responsibility to your film to not ask. And you don't have to say give me money. You can say, look, if you just spread the word, that'd be great. And I did that with a filmmaker that I know very well, and I know he doesn't have a lot of money, and I never asked for money, and he gave me $25, which to me is a huge thing. I was so thrilled, and I know that means so much to me because I know that guy's like me. I give like $25, and that's hard, and it adds up. And so there are people that are burned out, and then there's people that are brand new to this, and then there's people that will probably just love doing it. So I'm not sure if it'll die out or it'll evolve into something else. But the good thing, you should. I think to have a successful campaign, you have to have kind of a coordinated attack, and that means you got to come at it from a lot of different places, and so you should have your mix of people should be people that have, that probably have been inundated. They're probably in the film business and have been inundated from this stuff, along with the people that, they're your parents' friends, or, my friends are old and they probably haven't given to any Kickstarter campaigns, or they've given to, 2 of mine. There are some people that have literally given to 3 campaigns and they were mine. And so those people are not burned out on Kickstarter campaigns. And the other thing we can say is, look, this is happening during an election, and there's people that give to elections every year. They don't seem to be burned out on that. Gosh, that's brutal, because you get 1 million emails, and I'm not going to inundate you with emails, at least once you give to my campaign. But I did have one person who, has money. They're wealthy people who they said they couldn't give to me because they were fighting. They were in a particular state where they're fighting one of the parties in that state who's been taking over their state, and they're donating a lot of money to the political campaigns, and they couldn't afford to give me any money, and that, I understand that. I certainly don't hold any grudges. I've stopped doing that after the first campaign, somewhere in the middle of the first campaign. But people have their reasons. It's interesting when you go to wealthy people. I think the problem you have is that wealthy people will not give you $25 because they think that that's insulting, and it makes them, they would rather give you nothing than $25. So they just think that whereas, if they only knew that $25 is like a really terrific thing to get, and it all adds up. And so the people that have actually gotten back to me and have said why they couldn't give me money, which is very few people, most people just don't even respond. They were people that have means. They may be struggling. Maybe they've got 4 kids in college, but they're wealthy people with 4 kids in college, or they're not doing as well as they were last year, but they're still do very well. They do a lot better than I do as a poor filmmaker who doesn't get paid to make movies or whatever, but they don't want to give $25 because they think that that's insulting to you, the filmmaker. And it's just not. But you don't want to tell people that are wealthy, hey, look, just give me $25. It means so much to me, because you want to, you hope they're going to give you $100 or whatever. So it's just the way. It's just an interesting kind of observation I've made a couple of times now about wealthy people. Poor people, or I don't poor people. This is I shouldn't even put it in those terms, but people that don't have the means of some of these other people, give you $30 or $35 or whatever. They don't put a stigma on that, I think. So it's interesting.
And it's a real show of faith. I mean, when somebody who that $35 means a lot to them, like it's the sentiment and it's the psychology of it that is so difficult to navigate and so rewarding when you make it work.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, there's a science of the pitch, and I'm trying to be a better scientist, I guess. I mean, I've put a lot of thought into these pitches. I break my, we haven't talked about this, and I don't know if you want to go into it because it would probably take a while, but I have this massive spreadsheet that's it's a science project all its own that's divided up into all these different types of groups of people. And some people I'm going to email personally. Some people are going to get an email blast from me. Some people are going to get a phone call. They're all labeled, I can sort by all these different ways. Everybody, once I send them, something, I label them a certain way. I know whether they've gotten back to me or not. This is something I've kind of done on this campaign that I've refined over the last two campaigns. But, each group of people gets a different message, and each group of people gets a different, a hard sell or a soft sell. I mean, I've got two campaigns of people who've given to me, some have given to me twice and some have given you to one or the other. And so there's a different way I'm going to talk to those people than I am to people that have never given to me. I've sweat over these emails. I sweat over the slight different wording. And maybe it doesn't make that much difference, frankly, at the end of the day, but you're doing everything you can to, coax people into giving you money and not offend them and not, make them feel weird or whatever. So it's a whole, challenge. Again, if I were one of these experts, I'm sure there are people that are, that sell all the time, that are really good at this and understand the psychology. And I'm not that person. This is my own, I've learned from myself, and I haven't learned everything there is to learn. And, and I don't know that much about selling. I'm not a salesman at all. But I just, I've kind of figured out for myself a few things, and I assume that they're right because they seem to be working, or maybe they don't work, and I don't, maybe I could fix them or something. But it's
definitely working. I mean, the dollars keep going up. As we record this, you've got 17 days to go, and you're a little over halfway, like you just said. So, you're actually ahead of the game. That's the great thing about crowdfunding. You set yourself a goal, right? And you can see exactly how well you're doing. And what I like about your campaign is that your backer numbers are also pretty high, in terms of just that number matters a lot too. Not just the dollars that you've got. Because, if it were 4 people who had backed this and gotten you to 17,000, well, that would be impressive. But I would be wondering, okay, who are those 4 people and why are there only 4 people?
Yeah, no, it's I've been to those pages, where you're like, wait a second, why do they have 20 backers and $10,000 or whatever? But, it's interesting with our case, we have three big backers that have donated a pretty high amount. And then we have a lot of people who donated $10 and $15 or 30, or 25 or $30. So it's it's an interesting kind of mix that I haven't seen on our previous campaigns. So, but yeah, it's just it's a fascinating thing while you're doing it, the whole psychology of giving money or whatever, it's crazy. I would say this, a couple of little things, about the page. And, when cause I'm sure like someone will email you and you're like, oh, that's someone I have to give money to, cause they're, for whatever reason, they're their friend or they did something for you or whatever. So you go to their page and you're just hoping that it's going to be worth giving, and you usually have an amount that I go with, like I'm going to probably give $25. So I'm hoping at $25 that A, I'm going to like this project, and that B, at $25, they're going to be giving something decent away at $25. So I'm a big believer on creating a page that looks like you gave a shit. Like you really put a lot of, even if people don't read it, even people probably don't spend a lot of time going, reading your page, but that needs to look like you put some effort in and that you care about your project. That's a big thing for me because I go to pages sometimes where it looks like someone spent 5 minutes doing their page and I'm like, oh, and I have to give to them because they're a friend or whatever, or they took my class or whatever. And and sometimes I'll come back and say, listen, you got to beef this up. This isn't going to, you're not going to make your goal. And then I want to see that people are generous with their the different reward levels. I'm kind of, again, I have my own little rules on this, but I believe that you give the movie away at $25. If you're not doing that, then you're kind of shafting everybody. However you do that, whether it's a DVD or a stream or whatever, you should be giving it away around that price point. And that's the price point most people are coming in to get involved anyway. So, I think we have pretty generous, $55, you get like 5 DVDs and some other things. I mean, we give a lot away. I've costed that stuff out. I know how to fulfill it. I know what my costs are. I know how much the postage and the envelopes cost and what fits in particular envelopes. I have rules on my own little personal rules on what, when do I start mailing something? When do I start mailing something this large? Because it's going to go up to a bigger envelope and it's going to cost me more. And I kind of actually, this time around, I actually priced out. I know what at each level, what my percentage fulfillment cost is going to be, which I've never really done I've never done it that, I've never gone to that extent, but I've kind of just had it in the back of my head, but now I kind of know. And I think that, the other thing that you should show off, people should recognize when they get to your page is that you care about your rewards. You've actually thought about that. And whether they're actually things that people want or not, that you've actually, come up with something fun, something maybe related to what you're doing. And there's the standard rewards, there's t-shirts and, signed scripts or whatever. But then there's, hopefully you've come up with some things that are very specific to your particular campaign. And then also really important, most importantly, appeal to these different niche audiences that you're trying to attract to your page so that you're, if you've got Better Call Saul fans that you're dragging over to your page, you need to have something at a few different levels just for them, that they're going to really dig. So, for people who are fans of Patrick Fabian or Better Call Saul, we got a lot of great stuff. And Patrick he's such an amazing, first of all, he's a great actor, but he's just such an amazing, generous guy, totally on board this campaign, said, I will do whatever you need me to do. And, so we've got him doing some really great stuff, very personal things for his fans. And, so I think, big believer in that. Yeah.
So tell people who he is on Better Call Saul.
Yeah, he's Howard Hamlin. He's the guy that runs the law firm that, Jimmy, was trying to work for, that came off in the first season as the bad guy. But then you start around the end of the first season, you start to realize maybe he's not such a bad guy. Now he's back in the bad guy boat this season for what he's doing to Kim Wexler. If you watch the show, it's a great show, by the way. I have to say, I love the show. But Patrick he's also was the star of The Last Exorcism, which came out a few years ago. And it was like number 1 at the box office actually when it came out. And then he's been on a million TV shows. He's been on, regular on a bunch of shows and then guest starred on a bunch of shows. And he's a real veteran actor. He's a terrific actor. He's a total pro. And but he's also just a really great guy.
I did like his line in your video where he said he'd been on every crime show ever.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, I only pulled a few of them, but he's been on a ton of them. We've talked a lot about that. And then apparently this whole Saved by the Bell, the college years, where he plays Professor Lasky. I think I'm a little too old to know that, but we made sure to make that reference because he said that's still the one place that people stop him on the street, 20 years later and say, oh my God, Professor Lasky, and so we made sure to include that. Anyway, yeah, I was just saying, that I just feel like, it's this in part of that kind of broader strategy of crowdfunding, coming up with rewards. With Daniel Ash, we're trying to raise money to get some Daniel Ash music. And so, we're hoping to attract some Daniel Ash fans to the page and have some special, autograph stuff of his, at some different levels and that kind of thing.
Cool. So tell people where they can find the campaign and find you.
So I'll give you this little great piece of advice I got from, I should mention this guy. I saw a free seminar when at Film Independent about 3 weeks before I launched the campaign that was super helpful. I wasn't even going to go because I didn't think I had anything to learn. And I thought, nah, there's always something to learn. And I learned so much from this guy who, I mean, I've never worked with him, but just saw him do a 90-minute thing. He calls himself the Kickstarter guy. And I don't remember his name. I think you can go online and just Google the Kickstarter guy if you're curious. But one of his great piece of advice was to come up with a URL that you before you launch your campaign, it's pointed to your website, but eventually when you launch your campaign, it's pointed to your campaign page. So you're not telling people go to Kickstarter and do a search or give them that cryptic, Kickstarter bit.ly kind of, URL. So our URL that will take you right to our Kickstarter page is driverxmovie.com. Eventually it'll be pointed back to our website. But right now, if you go to driverxmovie.com, you can check out our page. You can check out the video. You can decide whether you think it's too long or not. You can email me and tell me exactly what you think about it. I'm happy to hear. The website address, again, driverxmovie.com or drvrx.com is our website. There's nothing really much on our website right now. The real website is the Kickstarter page. That's where all the information is right now. And then, I teach no budget filmmaking through No Budget Film School. That's nobudgetfilmschool.com. That is a site that I built myself, and I'm not a web designer, 11 years ago. So you can already imagine just how crappy a website it is, as far as the way it looks. It looked bad 11 years ago. It looked old 11 years ago. And that's 2 million years ago in real time, technology time or something. So don't be thrown by how bad my website looks. Someday I'm going to stop making movies. I'll have a little time to fix my website because I have I know where, my new website's coming from, but I just haven't had time to do it. But the only reason I mention this is, I was looking at these 2 articles I'd written before, and I'm working on a 3rd article. And I think they're still pretty good articles. They're still really valid. And if you're curious, you can go to the page that says No Budget Report. And if you scroll down, you can see the 2 articles that I've written about Kickstarter there. And then I plan on writing a whole new article, all the new stuff that I've learned from doing this a 3rd time. And if you're on my mailing list, which you can, easily subscribe to, then you'll get that article first, because I probably won't have time to post it after I write it. And I'm looking to write that pretty soon before the campaign ends. So do that. And then, I have other websites, there's the different movies and stuff like that, but those are the big ones.
Great. I'll get some of those links into the show notes as well, so people can find those more easily. Well, Mark, we'll be watching this campaign as it goes along. I'm going to get this posted pretty soon, so that if you're listening, there's probably still time to hit driverxmovie.com and give to the campaign.
Listen, Chris, I really appreciate this. It's so great to get a chance to talk about the movie and the campaign and share a little bit of, a few words of wisdom that I've been picking up in the last, 2 weeks of doing this campaign.
And it's my pleasure. It's so nice to finally get you on the show. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
That does it for another episode of the Film Festival Secret Podcast. I'm Chris Holland, your host, and you can find the show notes and subscribe links for the show at filmfestivalsecrets.com/podcast. Thanks for listening.